Welcome to episode 163 of the Sports Marketing Machine podcast, powered by Revelocity Sports, the show that helps you sell more tickets and grow your fan base. I'm your host, Jeremy Neiser. Today, we're going to talk about something that doesn't get enough attention, but it absolutely impacts your ticket sales more than almost anything, and it's your customer service. But not in the way you think. This isn't about, well, you got to be nicer or smile more. This is about why your fan experience feels inconsistent. So if you're a GM, external relations director, you're running your ticket operations, you're at a high level of an organization, and you just have this feeling that things aren't going the way that they should, this might be the episode where you go, aha, this is why. Today I'm going to share a simple framework that can fix it, because here's the truth. Your customer experience isn't defined by your best employee. It's defined by your most inconsistent one. Let's get into it. Let's dig into the real problem. Most teams think they have a customer service problem. They don't. They actually have a consistency problem. Here's what I mean. One rep is incredible, fantastic. One rep is average, and one rep creates friction, but they don't realize they're creating friction. And the fan gets completely different experiences depending on who they talk to or who they're working with. Same team, same brand, totally different outcome. And when that happens, fans don't say, hey, that one employee wasn't great. They say, hey, the team was frustrating. That's the gap. Where this framework that I'm going to share with you today, where did it come from? I'm going to call it the Cleveland Insight. This idea isn't mine. I had the privilege to sit down and be a part of a guest experience training from John DeJulius. John DeJulius was the customer service manager many years ago for the Cleveland Indians, now the Guardians, and trained his entire staff on this specific framework. What he realized when he was working for the Indians at the time was simple. You can't scale great service with motivation. You can only give people pizza parties so many times, right? Motivation doesn't all the time. That's not going to drive it all the time. You scale great service with clarity, because telling your staff, we're going to provide great service, take care of the fan, means something different to everyone. Instead, what John DeJulius created was something called non-negotiables. And I'll put a link into John DeJulius. And this isn't really about like me promoting him, but it was such a framework and such clarity on what we were trying to accomplish at this time that I think it's so valuable for sports teams. So John DeJulius created things called non-negotiables. The simple rules were always do, never do. This is no gray area, no guessing. That's where it gets really powerful. The simple rules were always do and never do. Why does always do and never do? Why do they work? Because it's simple. Think about how most teams train their staff. Long manuals, policies that nobody remembers, best practices that never get applied. They don't scale, but always do, never do. Simple to remember, easy to train, and easy to reinforce. And most importantly, it removes hesitation. Your staff doesn't think, am I allowed to do this? They know this is what we do here. That speed and confidence shows up in every interaction, from your ticket taker, from the person in the parking lot, from the person who's calling people to try to sell them a season ticket or a mini plan or a group, from your folks at the concession stand. Always do, never do is very simple for them to remember every single time. That speed and confidence will show up in every interaction. What this fixes, and I put the title to this, Death by 1,000 Moments. Here's why this matters so much for teams. Your fan experience isn't just 1 minute or 1 moment. It's a series of moments. They see the ad, they click on the website, they try to buy tickets, they ask questions, they show up to the game, they go to the parking lot, they pay for parking, they interact with the staff at the parking and then interact at the staff at scanning their tickets, they buy concessions, they leave their stadium, the arena, after having an experience. That's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different touch points across multiple things. And here's the problem. One bad moment will override 5 or 6 good ones. As sad as it sounds, one bad moment will absolutely override 5 or 6 good ones. So if one person gives a confusing answer, doesn't follow up, makes things harder than it needs to be, that's what the fan remembers. Not your fireworks, not your promotion, that moment. So how do you get company-wide adoption? And I think this is where some teams get this wrong. They treat customer service like it belongs to ticketing or guest services or specific departments. It doesn't. It actually belongs to everyone. Every single person in your organization is part of treating and impacting fans from a customer service level, because the fan doesn't see departments. Sure, they may come up and buy a hot dog and they know that that's the worker there, but they don't know that that worker who gave them that hot dog is not the same person that works in the office. They just say, hey, they all work for the team. So they lump everyone together. They see one brand. So if marketing says one thing, sales says another, operation handles things differently, that's friction. For this to work, it has to be company-wide. Same standards, same expectations, same language. So how does this impact revenue? Let's bring this back to a lot of what a lot of our teams are thinking about, and that's about selling more tickets. Because this isn't just about the experience, about repeat behavior. Fans don't come back because you ran one good promotion. They come back because they felt, well, by golly, this was easy. It felt smooth. It was worth it. I got a good value. And if your experience is inconsistent, they hesitate. They wait, and they don't buy again. So how do you transition everything that I just shared with you into action? You have to start simple. You don't need to overcomplicate this. You don't need a 50-page document. You need a handful of always and a handful of never. So a handful of always do and a handful of we never do that. That defines how your team treats fans. It's clear, it's simple, and it's repeatable. So here's my challenge for you this week. Take a look at your fan experience and ask this question. Does it depend on who the fan talks to? Because if the guest services customer experience is different between what you get at the concessions to the person in the parking lot to the person who's taking the ticket, if all of those are different, then you don't have a people problem. You actually have a system problem. And this framework is one of the simplest ways to fix it. So if you have found this episode helpful, be sure to share it with someone on your team, especially someone operations, external relations, or ticket sales that are trying to improve things so that you are continuously working towards selling more tickets. If you want help building this out for your organization, don't hesitate. I'm happy to have a conversation with you and kind of share a little bit more about how this might look. But if you would like a little bit more, I'm going to give you some steps here to how to actually build your always do, never do list. Let's add a few things. Number one, for always do, never do. Here's some tips, some takeaways here before we wrap up. You don't need 20 on the list. You need like 5 or 7 that actually move the needle. So here's a couple good ones for the sales side of things. Always respond the same day. Speed equals trust. Silence kind of kills momentum. Always make it easy to buy. So clear pricing, clear steps, no confusion. Always give fans a clear next step. Always assume confusion is your fault, not the fans' fault. Always follow up with interested fans. Always prepare the fan before they arrive. So those are some 5 always do's. And then here's a few never do. Never make the fans search for information. If they have to dig or they have to search for stuff, they're just not going to convert. It's just a bad experience. Never overcomplicate your offers. Never treat every fan the same. Like, there's a difference between group leaders and season ticket holders and first-time fans. Like, never try to pass the fan around when there's a problem. Own it. Help them solve it. Never disappear after you make a sale. Those are just 5 ones, and that's specifically leaning into the ticket side. But if you're the general manager, or you're running your operation and you're thinking about how do we make this better, maybe you bring this up at a staff meeting when you're talking about guest experiences and customer experience. How do we make this better? Let's come up with 5 to 7 always do's and never do's that we would have in a card that we stick in our wallet or stick in our pocket or we give to our staff or we put it in concessions, that everyone follows the same exact process, because your customer service will incrementally increase when everyone is doing the same thing and it's a simple message to them. My next episode, I'm going to dive into the always do, never do list even more and really kind of share a lot more around some additional things for you and some stronger examples. If you're going to be meeting with your team and you're like, all right, well, how do I put this together? I'm going to give you all of that information in the next episode next week. But this is a good running start for a lot of teams. Always do's and never do's, 5 to 7, you put on a list and everybody knows what to do, how to do them during the season, and the concessions and the parking and the ticketing. Everyone's on the same page. I think that would be super helpful for you. So if you found value, be sure to take a moment to rate or review this episode. It really means the world to me. But more importantly, it's share it with someone who's working in sports, trying to grow their fan base and sell more tickets. Until next time.